Hi, good morning, and welcome to Real Nurse Stories. In today's episode of Real Nurse Stories, I'm interviewing Grace. Grace is from Brisbane in Australia, and Grace has an interesting nursing story to tell. So we're going to start right at the beginning. And first of all, Grace, I'd like to welcome you to Real Nurse Stories.
Thank you so much for having me, Eva. Like you said, my name's Grace. I'm in Brisbane, Australia, and I'm really excited to share some of my stories.
Well, thank you. So let's start right back at the beginning, Grace, and let's think about what actually made you decide to want to become a nurse.
This question always stumps me. I think a lot of things really contributed to me becoming a nurse. I think one of the reasons that really impacted my path towards nursing, though I actually have no recollection of actually ever making the decision to do nursing. I think it's always just sort of been a lighted path that I've always just sort of followed along, and then just sort of found my way through it and fell into it and loved it. So, I don't actually remember making the decision like at school, yes, this is what I want to do. It was always very much that idea in the back of my mind that I've always just sort of worked towards, and it happened and I love it. So, but one of the reasons I think really contributed to it was the fact that I was a premature baby. I was born at 26 weeks. And with that came some health issues through my childhood, including a brachial artery aneurysm, which put me in and out of hospital a lot through my childhood years. Being in those sort of medical environments for a lot of children can be really traumatizing. However, I had a wonderful paediatric team, and they found it very engaging to really more educate me than to belittle me and put me as the child in the room. So I was always involved in the discussion, no matter how young I was. And because my case was quite rare in a child, often we had student doctors in the room. And I do remember specifically, it was always a game to never say what I had. And he would always have the student doctors come and examine me, and he would always be like, shh, don't tell. And they would have to examine me and figure out what was wrong with me. And if I didn't tell, I got a lollipop. And if none of the students guessed it, and then I got to tell them what it was, I got a second lollipop. So that was always fun. Sort of the pediatric team that was involved in my care was so involved in the educational side and making it less scary for me. So I think that experience of the human body education starting from such a young age really nurtured my interest in the human body, how it works, which then was reinforced at school and then sort of fed into my career in nursing. So yeah, I think that was one major factor that influenced my decision to go into nursing. But also, I've always been a very caring person, and I was always given the little potty orphaned animals on the farm to care for. As young as 1 year old, I shared a bottle with a sheep. So I was always just wanting to care for all the little animals. So, and especially when they were all little like baby animals. So I always loved that, and I loved biology in school, and I think all those things just combined sort of led me towards nursing, and ta-da, there was a thing that I loved, and there we go.
There you go. And that's fabulous though, isn't it, to have had such a positive experience as a young child, being born with that condition and in and out of healthcare, to have a team that engaged you and involved you and explained in that way. Such a positive experience and such a great example of kind of person-centered care, no matter how old you are.
Absolutely. I always reflect back onto that actually, especially during my education when person-centered and patient-centered care was so heavily drilled into us. I had these memories coming back of like my pediatric team showing me diagrams or drawing what I had for me so I could understand. And they always made sure I was comfortable and educated for the intellectual stage that I was in. So as I got older, the more and more information they provided me to that they would of an adult. They never talked down to me as a child, but they always provided me the information that would make me feel comfortable within my condition as a child, and always made sure that I felt okay. So definitely reflected back onto the patient-centered care, which gave me and my family so much more reassurance.
Yeah. Does the team that treated you know that you went on to become a nurse?
Actually, in recent days, recent months now, actually, I am finishing my RNs now, and I had just done a practical, my second last practical, and I looked up one morning, we were doing handover, 7 o'clock on the dot, and I'm looking at my handover sheet, I'm looking at this name, and I'm like, why do I know this name? Why do I know it? And I looked up, and there's my surgeon, and he just smiles and he goes, hi, Grace, how are you? And I'm like, oh, doctor won't say his name.
Yeah.
I'm like, hello. And he just had the biggest smile, and all my preceptors, the NUM, the doctors, they're all looking at me going, how in the world does a 20-something-year-old student nurse know this person?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this doctor did my surgery many years ago.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So, and over the duration of his time in hospital, every time he saw that I had a spare minute, he'd flag me down and be like, I found your files and I took your case internationally and all this stuff. And I found the photos from my surgery that I have in my personal medical files and showed him. He's like, oh, great. And then he even started like examining my arm and to check what the suture lines looked like and everything. It was so wonderful to sort of have that resolution. And even after, I think 9 years now, and he's retired and everything. So it sort of came full circle. And I was the one being cared for, and now I was caring for him. So that was such a wonderful resolution. So that was a wonderful week.
Yeah, it's funny how life does that sometimes, isn't it? People who kind of been in your life at various points and then they come back round. I can remember a similar situation with a headmaster many years ago, and somebody was admitted, and I, like you, recognised the name. Why do I recognise the name? And this person was my old headmaster from primary school. He had no recollection. He couldn't remember me, but I remembered him. And it's like, it's bizarre when that happens in the nursing world, but it does happen. And that's a great story, actually. A really positive story. Like you say, comes full circle.
It's almost 10 years ago, but he still recognised me and he knew my name straight off the bat. And I mean, he looked after me for 12 and a half years. So I hope so he knew my name. So but it was a really wonderful resolution to that circle.
Yeah, definitely. So Grace, tell me a little bit about, I know that you've referenced that you did your EN hospital training, and you went into that at a really young age, didn't you?
I did, actually. I was 17 when I started. We started in January of 20. Oh,
was it
goodness, 2017? Yes, 2017. So I was 17. And no, sorry, 2016, January 2016. I started my training at Mater Hospital in Brisbane, and I finished at just over the age of 19 in 2017. So it was an 18-month program, hospital trained, and it was such a wonderful program and very, very hands-on, which very much suited my educational needs. I'm a very hands-on learner. And so starting at age 17 was very eye-opening. But that program met every educational need and discipline that I think if I hadn't done that program, I think I'd be a very different nurse than I am today. And just the way they structured their learning within that program is absolutely wonderful. Certainly not for others. It's a very, very specifically designed program, but very much hands-on learning, which, like I said, suited my needs, and we always had lots of opportunity for practical learning. So I think that very much helped me succeed within my education there and my career now. And I have gone back to study my irons, so just about finished that. And hopefully we'll be done. Well, we're never done. We're never done.
Never done. No.
But at least one more thing ticked off.
I just want to go back, Grace, to your EN training, because you referenced in the information that you sent me, there were some challenges there, particularly at kind of going in to start your EN training at 17. So can you just share with me a little bit more around what some of those challenges were?
Yeah, so starting at such a young age, 17, I actually hadn't finished high school. I went to go back to finish my high school education, and I got into the MARTA training program. So they didn't mind that I didn't have a HSC because I passed all the entrance exams. So I just went straight into nursing. About being trained in the hospital environment, you're surrounded by a lot more, when I was there, I was 17 years old, so I was surrounded by a lot more older colleagues and professors and preceptors and things like that. So being 17 and in such a professional environment, I think I had to sort of overcome a large barrier of being treated as a child because of my age. Luckily enough, I was not one to very much look my age, so I could get away with it a little bit more. But just especially being in high critical areas, taken seriously, given the opportunity to learn, I think was a lot more difficult to overcome, being such a younger age and treated more like a child than my peers who were older. So I really had to prove myself, especially in high critical areas like emergency, theatre, paediatrics, everything like that. So I really had to prove myself that my age didn't identify my competence. And especially starting nursing so young as well, like I was 19 when I finished. So again, starting my first jobs, again, had to overcome that my age didn't change my competence and my education level. So that was a massive barrier in starting nursing so young, but I wouldn't change it.
No.
I think it was still wonderful. And
so it's a very...
I feel very blessed. Blessed being in the nursing workforce very young. So yeah, and just starting out my career a lot younger as well. So yeah, I've always loved it.
Sometimes it's a fine line, isn't it? You know, I think, like, I went into nursing at 18, and I was talking about this on a different interview, you know, that you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. And I'd gone in at 18 completely green, thought I knew what nursing was about and really didn't. And it was a bit of a culture shock, you know, and I would imagine being 17, you know, that would also apply, particularly in high critical areas, because they're the sickest patients, aren't they? And to be exposed to that when you're 17 and just into training, just starting your training, must have been quite a culture shock in that sense.
Oh, definitely. And definitely one to go home and thank your family members for sure, especially being in such high critical areas. And just realizing how quickly things can change. Being in a classroom and learning about it is one thing, but being exposed to it is another. But I do remember on my first prac, as all nursing students, you start your first prac in the aged care environment, and you start learning about those basic care needs. And I do remember it was my first day and I was young, 17, all ready to go, ready to get my hands dirty, all happy as Larry and ready to go in it and start working. And I was so excited. I do remember that. And I was just like, yes, like this is the day that it begins. And my preceptor was just like, yep, okay, we're going to start the day. You go in this room and make sure they're mostly independent, but make sure they're starting to get ready for breakfast. Usually they're starting to get dressed around this time. Just make sure that they've got everything that they need and also have woken up for the morning. And I'll be in the next room. And I'm like, okay, great. And I knock and I open the door and this elderly gentleman is standing in his room stark naked and trying to get dressed. I'm like, oh, sorry. I'll close the door. Go find my preceptor. They're up. They're getting ready. So, that was my first day on the job in quotations. But yeah, that was quite funny. So I would never forget that culture shock for sure. But yeah.
It is a bit of a baptism of fire, isn't it, when you start nursing? It's like those kind of situations happen a lot, and it's, you kind of exposed, and that's how you learn.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And like I said, I'm a hands-on learner, so
yeah.
Yep. That was definitely a hands-on experience.
Yeah. Okay, Grace. So I'm interested to know a little bit about the opportunity that you had being able to go to Nepal as a nurse and volunteer. And I wondered if you'd just wouldn't mind sharing that story with me.
Of course. I think Kathmandu, Nepal, my time there, I think was a massive highlight in my career as far. I've been very blessed to have many highlights in my career, but I think going to Kathmandu, Nepal was one of the shining stars in my career at the moment. And it was such an amazing experience. So I had the opportunity to facilitate an overseas international student placement through Work the World, which is a UK-based company that facilitates medical placements globally, and through my university. So I was able to facilitate credits towards doing this experience, towards my RN degree, as well as, so it did count as one of my practical experiences in my RN degree. So I was placed within Kathmandu, Nepal, in metropolitan Kathmandu for 2 weeks, where I was in the emergency department and the high-risk acute labour delivery maternity ward. And I also spent 1 week in a rural health clinic where we were the most qualified people for about 6 hours radius. And we were about 7 hours from Kathmandu. So that was an incredible experience, to say the least. So I'll start when I was in Kathmandu. So I was placed in the emergency department, and from day one, just seeing the differences in healthcare from Australia to Kathmandu, that was incredible. The emergency departments over there are sort of organised in a colour-coded system from green to yellow to red. Green being less acute, yellow being acute-ish, and red being highly acute, as I'm sure you could imagine with a traffic light system. However, one of the major differences is that obviously being a third world country, private healthcare is a absolute privilege reserved for about 1% of the population. And Kathmandu is a very heavily populated city. So pretty much at all hours of the day and night, we were at capacity and over capacity. So, for example, in the red zone, which is technically a 7-bed area, we would have anything between 20 to 40 patients.
Gosh.
Just in the red zone.
Yeah.
In the yellow zone, which is reserved for about 30 patients, we would have anywhere between 50 and 60 patients. In the green zone, that was more manageable, colds and flus and things like that.
Yeah.
That was a lot more higher flowing area. But as a student, we were mainly placed in the red high acute area. And where we saw just even in the way that they deliver their care is very different. I actually remember on my first shift, in the first couple of hours, I remember being asked to go clean this machine. I was just like, yeah, no worries. And because we were getting a bit of a tour, and we had just finished the tour, and then we had an acute situation come in, and because it was our first couple of hours, they didn't really want us involved. And we were welcome to observe and everything. And where the machine was situated was sort of overlooking the high risk situation going on. And so I was asked to clean that machine earlier. So I was like, oh, I'll just stand here cleaning it and watch, basically. And I was like cleaning it. I'm like, what is this? And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, it looks like an ECG machine, but it's not an ECG machine, or what I recognize as an ECG machine. And I'm like, oh, so I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's an ECG machine. Like, it's got the 12 leads. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like looking at all the like printer paper and everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is an ECG machine. But I'm like, and once I concluded that it was an ECG machine, I'm like, but how does it work? Because there's these like little silver cup things, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, where's the stickers?
See, I remember that.
I'm feeling really naive at this point. And I'm like, I don't understand. So I'm like, I'm just gonna like wait and watch. And we had this one case come in, and unfortunately it was a DOA, but to confirm we did an ECG. And I was watching them put the gel on, and then the suction cup little silver things, and I was just like, oh, that's how it works. So I felt like a tiny bit out of my depth in that. I was just like, I don't know, like I figured out what machine it was, but I didn't know how to use it, and it was just such an older generation machine, such older technology, and they very much don't rely on machines for diagnostics as well, purely because they cannot afford it. They do have one CT machine for the entire hospital, which sees about 35,000 people a day.
Gosh.
Yeah, so and to get an MRI, you have to go to the private hospital and pay probably equivalent of about $1,500 Australian. So obviously that is, for a lot of the population, completely out of the question, because on arrival, healthcare is payable. You have to arrive with a pocket full of cash for healthcare. And even just for something as simple as antibiotics, your family member is expected to walk down the street to the pharmacy, buy the antibiotics, walk back to the hospital, and supply it to the staff to administer it to you. Like,
kind of puts things into perspective, doesn't it, when you think about
absolutely
what we take for granted in the Western kind of world that has all these resources, and we don't have to experience that.
Absolutely. And like the whole emergency department has one ventilator, which was reserved basically for transferring from the emergency department to the OR. Not once did I see that machine used.
No.
Every other time, if a patient needed to be intubated and put on manual ventilation or automatic ventilation, they were intubated, and a family member was given the endo bag to intubate, to aspirate their family member, and the respirations that they needed to survive, because there simply was not enough staff to do it.
No.
And patients' family members were quite literally taught on the spot how to do it. And stood there for hours, if not days, doing it.
Gosh.
but in more cases than none, we were actually seeing that the family member was either too ill to be expected to have a recovery, or too old to recover, or the family simply could not afford to stay there any longer. So there was cases where I literally saw the doctor sign a death certificate, hand it to the family, extubate the patient's family carry them to a cab to go home to die.
Gosh. That must have been quite tough for you, observing that, having kind of trained in Australia, and we take, as we've said before, we take for granted so many of these things. That must have been quite challenging to observe that.
Yeah, challenging is definitely a word for it. Incredibly eye-opening is another one. Very, very much eye-opening to the difference in our healthcare systems, and just how grateful I am to be living and working in a first world country with so much access to westernized medicine and care, and a public healthcare system that does still effectively care for you, because basically over there the system's so overworked that if you don't have the money, you're literally not treated.
No.
So it's a massive eye-opener. And just like even just seeing how hard the staff works over there, like on a night shift, just in the red zone, so that is technically X amount of beds, but we were seeing up to like 20 to 30 people in the red zone alone, where we were having cases with such high acuity. There was one staff member responsible for them overnight, and the yellow zone had 2 for a night shift. During the day, there was 3 staff members for the red zone.
No reason to complain, have we, at all? No reason to complain.
You know, when I got back and there was a lot of speakers to like nursing ratios over here, I just had no respect for it. Because I got back, I then continued to travel for a bit longer, but when I got back in the new year, and sort of followed COVID towards Australia. But I sort of got back just in time. But when we got back, there was a lot of stink about nursing ratios. And though it is something that we are trying to address in our healthcare system here, I honestly had no respect for it. And I did not open my mouth in fear that I would say, suck it up. So, because I just seen these wonderful people work their bums off with absolutely no resources, no breaks, nothing. And like, it was absolutely incredible. And I had the opportunity to attend some lectures because we were in the teaching university hospital over there. And just the intensivist over there is absolutely incredible. And, you know, he said to us, this is going to be such a large impact on your career, because every time you treat the patient, you're going to think back to here. And the privilege that you get to treat that patient over in your westernized hospitals, and what we would have given to treat that patient over here. Because we simply do not have the ability to. And that's definitely stuck with me. But so, and then after being in emergency, I went on to the maternity ward. And like I said, that was the high risk and acute maternity ward. So more higher risk pregnancies. So placenta previa, and what's the word? Geriatric mothers, that's the word. and over there they actually consider geriatric mothers like pretty much any older than 25, which I found very shocking. Considering I'm 23.
An awful term, though. It's an awful term.
I'm like, oh, if that's a geriatric mother over here, you don't want to see a geriatric mother in Australia. And I don't even like the term either. I'm like, that's a bit mean. But yeah, so over there, a geriatric mother is considered at any age over 25. And I was like, oh, I'm not far from 25, so you'd consider me a geriatric mother. So I'm like, okay. But I had the wonderful experience of I had never been present for a live birth where the baby survived. So I had the wonderful experience of witnessing 2 live vaginal births and 2 live C-sections, which was absolutely incredible. And the first one, I bawled my eyes out. I was just like, and I was there with the student midwife, and she's like, "It's okay, I cried my first time too." And I'm like, "This is amazing." And like there was that moment where it was the first one I saw was a C-section. It was a moment where the baby wasn't crying, and everyone, the whole room was silent and still, and then it cried, and I just lost it. I was, and I'm not one to cry, so I was very shocked that I was crying. But I had to step out of the room and also regather myself. But
it's such a privilege.
It's just amazing. It is. It's such a privilege, and I think that's what really overwhelmed me was the privilege of being there and witnessing that amazing experience. And just, it's a little human, it's a little person, and you're there the moment that they entered the world. It's just incredible. So I had the privilege of witnessing 4 births, and that was amazing. And and then we actually had a incredibly crazy case come through, and the acute maternity was sort of off the emergency area, and there was always this mattress leaning against the wall in the hallway. And I was always just like, maybe they just have like a spare mattress. I don't know. What if they have like, instead of having 6 laboring mums, what if they have 7? So maybe they just have a spare mattress. And I'm like, but why would they put it in the hallway? Why not put it like in the room where they're laboring, like on the side? I'm like, there's plenty of other spaces that I can see that you could have kept this, but why is it at the doors? Anyway, I learnt my lesson very quickly. We had this one case come through, and it was an undetected case of gestational diabetes, and she had started seizing in the middle of the night, and it was now about 11 a.m. And they were upper class family, so they had private health. And so when she started having her 3rd seizure, but this time they didn't know that she was seizing, when she started having a 3rd seizure at the breakfast table, they then decided to take her in through to her obstetrician at the private hospital, who then very quickly turned her away and said, "This is too acute for us. You need to go to the public," because they didn't have the ability to deal with that. Their facility didn't have that ability. No. And so she then had another 2 seizures in the cab over, and Kathmandu traffic, absolutely insane. So it was about another hour and a half before she actually got to us, and her husband and mother were in attendance and were carrying her in. And very quickly I learnt the lesson that the mattress just goes flop onto the floor, and very acute situations happen on the floor.
Gosh.
And at that stage it was everyone hands on deck, and she was actively seizing as we were treating her. At this point it was her 5th and 6th seizure that she had on our floor. And unfortunately no heartbeat was discoverable. And we ended up having to put the mother on a ventilator.
Oh gosh.
So that was again another massive eye opener. And just things like the private hospital didn't even have the correct medications to give to her. in that situation because they only really deal with scheduled C-sections. So that was, you sort of look back on that case and you think about, well, where are all the differences from that situation to what would have happened in Australia? And yeah, it was an incredible experience to sort of watch how they handle that situation. And the staff there are absolutely incredible. They're very highly trained. And that's one thing I will give to their healthcare system. They do highly train medical professionals. It's just unfortunately that
it's not the
economy
resources.
Over there it doesn't reflect their education level. But that experience definitely sort of then led into a bit more education. And we had another lecture by the head nun in that department who brought out she calls her book, and it's a book of all of the cases for the years as far. And, you know, she's documenting this and she's showing it to us, and she's just like, you know, if you want to look at statistics, like have a look at my book. And so we're all sitting there and we're all going through it together, and, you know, the amount of cases that we then realized that had actually gone undetected as gestational diabetes, though just gestational diabetes and pretty much any type 2 diabetes in Nepal alone is incredibly rare because they are mainly very malnutritioned and underweight. But gestational diabetes was one thing that was considerably undetected in older, well, what they would call geriatric, being over 25 mothers. So it was amazing to see how their statistics sort of changed the way they looked at healthcare compared to in Australia, the way we look at statistics and healthcare. So that was an incredible learning opportunity there. So.
And I know, Grace.
I think.
Sorry, you go.
Okay. I think, like, in any area, when you're working in a third world country, you're going to find differences and similarities. But I felt very, very privileged having that opportunity, going over there and working as part of their team and being very hands-on. They were very welcoming to us and being very hands-on. They wanted to trust us and trust that we knew what we were doing. But obviously we're still in a supervisional sort of role. But just things like, you know, okay, great, you know how to put an IV in, go put an IV in, because we don't need to stand here and watch you put an IV in 20 times a day. So just little things like that. But yeah, I felt very, very privileged having that opportunity to add that to my education.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that experience as well, just working in that sort of setting, absolutely incredible. And a lot of things I have learned, and a lot of things I've learned not to take for granted, for sure.
Definitely. And I know, Grace, that you actually gave a lot back whilst you were there beyond your hospital visit, and I'd really like to hear about that, because I think, you know, you've had such a fabulous opportunity and you were there as an observer, but you actually did more than that. And that
so I actually in the afternoons, in the later afternoons after our shifts or on the weekends and stuff, we had the opportunity to sort of organise things within the city through, I guess, what you can call as sort of like a house handlers and house managers. But one of the things that we organised on a Friday afternoon, we all organised to go into our shifts an hour earlier, finish an hour earlier. And we had organised through our house manager to go and visit this local orphanage. And we had gone shopping the day before in the local market, and we picked up like lollipops and like all these sort of things, and we were all so excited to go meet these kids at this orphanage and just spend some time with them. Like, the manager of the house is telling us that they love soccer and things like that. So we all ended up actually, so there was about, I think it was about 6 or 7 of us at the house at the time. And the manager of the house actually, because we wanted to actually contribute something that would actually help them. And so the manager of the house got in contact with the gentleman that runs the orphanage and asked what they actually needed. So we all ended up putting in money and brought all of their school books for the next year. So all of their writing utensils, all of their notepads, all of their textbooks, all of that sort of stuff, which between the 7 of us, I think it only equated to about $500 in total. So, you think about the cost of education over here in Australia, and then you think about the cost of education supplies for 93 children is about $500 Australian. That's absolutely insane.
Crazy,
but,
isn't it?
So we ended up going to this orphanage, and we had this wonderful afternoon playing with these kids, and I just fell in love. I was just like, oh, these kids are amazing. And I got chatting to the manager of the orphanage, and he's a wonderful gentleman. His name's Lama, and he is an ex-monk, and he started developing all these relationships with local kids that really needed a bit more guidance and support. And anyway, he ended up deciding to leave the monkhood and going and building literally out of his own pocket. And he bought a property, and he just started taking in all these kids, and he started fostering and well, fostering isn't the right word. He started sponsoring children that were from very rural environments, and bringing them to him so he could provide them with an education. But they still had family from where they were from. But it was just a way to get kids from like rural villages. Like, I'm talking about 5 to 6 days hiking just from like Pokhara or Sarankot or like other more sort of not metropolitan, but sort of towns that are closer. But then they've got villages and villages and villages out and out across the country. So in total, he had about 93 kids there.
Gosh, that's a lot of kids.
And the oldest was 17 and the youngest was 3. So a massive age range. Anyway, I got talking to him, and I had this one week, I think it was 6 days actually, where I had planned to go and do a bit of R&R in a neighbouring township called Pokhara. And I was going to do this like yoga for beginners thing. And I was like, I've had a busy year. I'll just relax and do this yoga thing. And I was just like, I always wanted to learn yoga. I've just never really gotten around to it. I was like, that'd be really nice. It's on a lake, and you overlook the lake every day and do yoga. And I'm like, that's really nice. Let's treat myself to that. And so I had planned to do that, but I just fell in love with these kids. And I was just like, what are the chances that you would swap board with me for me to volunteer here? He's like, oh, we're always looking for volunteers. And he's just like, and you're a very science person. All he could say was, you're science person. I was like, oh, no. Like, I guess you can call it science. And so he was just like, yes, you can teach some classes, and we always need extra teachers, and we always need extra hands and things like that. So definitely come. And he was so welcoming. And so instead of going on my yoga retreat, I went and stayed at this orphanage for a week, and and which was absolutely incredible. No regrets whatsoever.
No.
And the kids ended up doing exercise hour at like 5 o'clock in the morning, which was freezing. It was winter over there. It was freezing, and I'm like in my sleeping bag, being like, "Oh no, I'm not getting up." And then I think the second day I was just like, "Oh, but they sound like they're having so much fun. I'll just get up and do it with them."
Yeah.
So by the second day, I was up doing their exercise hour with them, which was like, it was like watching little kids doing army drills. They were like running around in like the circle of the yard and then doing like star jumps and then push-ups, and I was trying to keep up, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to do the jog. I'm good with that. But so I ended up trading this 1 week for board for volunteering, and the first couple of days I just did lessons, and I loved doing like art with them, and then I was just like, oh, well, they're very, very visual and art focused learners. So I was like, oh, well, I'll teach them how to anatomically draw a heart and like draw all the organs of the body and all this sort of stuff. So they had so much fun doing that. And then like I was looking through the science textbook, and they have a section on health. So then I was teaching them that and going over and over and over again. So they had the literacy there and some understanding of health and hygiene and oral hygiene, hand hygiene, all that sort of stuff. However, as the days went on, I think I got to about the midway of day 2, and I was just like, hang on a minute. It's like, I've not seen these kids shower once. And I was like, I come to think of it, I've not seen them brush their teeth.
No.
It's like, hang on. Do they wash their hands before they eat? And as Nepali culture, they don't use cutlery. They use their hands.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and the like internal freak out started. I was just like, oh my God.
That's like the worst thing to a nurse, isn't it? Hand washing, and
I know. I think I just remember having this realization, and I was sitting there with this cup of tea, and I was in the kitchen, and the cook, they always called her Auntie, and Auntie makes the best cup of masala tea. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And like every time she saw me, she's like, tea? I was like, yes, please. I was sitting in the kitchen, and I've had this realization. I just got these massive goosebumps all over my arms, and I felt physically ill. I was just like, oh no, they don't wash their hands, they don't brush their teeth. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So then I was just like, okay, so maybe I'll like start focusing my education more on that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I saw Llama across the field, and I was like, oh, Llama. And I like ran over. I was like, do the kids have toothbrushes? And he's just like, sorry? I was like, do the children have like toothbrushes to brush their teeth? Once I like calmed myself down and spoke at a normal pace, because I was flustered and freaked out. I was speaking really fast and he didn't understand me. And I was like, do the kids have toothbrushes? He's like, yes. I was like, then why don't they brush their teeth? And he's like, oh, not important of the day. And I'm like, my internal brain was just like, it is important. I just was like, okay. So then he had to go to a meeting with the council or something, and so he left, and I was just like, okay, I'll speak to him tomorrow morning. And all night I could not sleep. I was just like, I really don't feel okay with this.
No.
Like, they need to learn to brush their teeth. They don't wash their hands. And so I like started looking around the bathrooms and stuff. And I'm like, they have like old soap dispensers and stuff, but like they were all empty and everything. Yeah. And I was just like, okay. And then I did find where they keep their toothbrushes, but it's like in the dining hall on the shelf, very high up, and they're all dusty. I'm like, clearly they haven't been used in a while.
No.
So I was like, okay. So I'm like starting to gather all this information, and I could not sleep that night at all. And so I was just in my head, I was just like, okay, how can I fix this? What can I do? Like, okay, we can educate them more. I'm like, but they don't really respond to like verbal stimuli. They don't really respond to the information. They're like, oh yeah, cool, that's stuff that we know. Yep, cool. Yeah. But they don't actually implement that knowledge. So I was like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? I'm like, well, for starters, they don't really have the resources. Secondly, they sort of have the knowledge and they have the literacy to back up the knowledge and or be taught to them, but they don't have reminders and they don't have a routine. So I was like, okay, so we need to adjust that. So by morning, I'd come up with this entire health initiative in my head. And I think I was awake at like I was dressed, and I knew that Llama got up at about 4:30, just before exercise hour at 5. So I was like at his door at 4:30 and was just like, I need to speak to you. I think he was a bit scared of me. He was just like, oh, and I was like what? Like, if I have your permission, can I do this thing? Like, can I do it?
Yeah.
And I tried explaining it to him, and I was just like, and I can paint the walls, and I can like give you soap and all this sort of stuff. And I think it was just very much, I think one, there was like a bit of language barrier, but two, I think my enthusiasm was a bit overwhelming. So I think he just agreed to it. And so his one condition was that I finish the task before I leave Sunday. It was like, okay, absolutely, I will finish the task. And so I was like, okay, this is my focus now. And so one of the other volunteers took over my classes, and I was just like, okay, how do I fix this? And so all day I was like walking around Kathmandu city, and I was like walking into paint shops, and I was walking into like pharmacies and all this sort of stuff. And I was just like, I need like X amount of liters to last a year. Like, how do I make this work? And then of course the language barrier, that was insane. I think I ended up like, I got like a piece of paper and like drew what I want, and then I took photos of the walls that I wanted to paint and then showed them, and I was just like, this is what I want to do now. How much paint do I need? Like, I don't know how to figure this out. I was like, a long time since I've done this type of math. So I was like, oh, I don't know. And anyway, it ended up being okay, and I ended up getting the right amount of paint. And I got in contact. I remember walking around Kathmandu being like, how the hell do I find a plumber? Like, I don't even know how to do this. I'm like Googling Kathmandu plumbing services and stuff. And like all these like DIY shops and like Mitre 10s or like Bunning equivalents like kept coming up. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go there and see if like someone there is a plumber. So I went to like the outskirts of Kathmandu, somewhere where I probably should not have been. And I was just like, I walked into like this hardware store, and everyone was like, what is this blonde Western looking girl
doing in
this store? Everything is in Nepali. And I'm like, can't read Nepali. I'm like, can speak a tiny bit, but can't read it. So I'm like walking through the stores being like, okay, where's like all the pipes and stuff? And eventually this one gentleman, who was a younger gentleman, came up to me. He's like, English? And I was like, yes, English. And he's just like, I speak English. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was like, okay. That's as far as I got into my plan. I was like, let's just go to the store. I did not consider whether or not no one spoke English. And I was just like, okay, I need like the showers fixed at this orphanage. And like I had the orphanage card with me, and I was like, this is where it is. I'm like, orphans, children, like, and I'm showing him photos. I'm like, orphans. And he's just like, okay, I understand that, orphans. I was like, I need the showers fixed. Like, they don't work. And he's just like, okay. And so I'm like, I need like someone to do it. Like, I need a plumber.
Yeah.
And he's like, plumber? And I'm like, water pipe person. He's just like, okay. And so I ended up finding someone, and got people up there to fix all the showers. And they just have like drop system toilets, so it didn't really matter. And so I got someone fixing the toilets. And then while I was at the hardware store, I was like, I need like a big soap holder thing to put in the shower.
Yeah.
And so he like showed me where those were. And then like I'm trying, like I'm pretty handy. I'm a pretty handy person. But I didn't know that you can't drill into a tile. So I was like trying to drill these dispensaries into this tile. And this is like 17-year-old kid, this is one of the kids at the orphanage. He like comes up to me, he's like, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, how do you do it? And he's just like, you can't drill the tile. I'm like, oh, okay. So what am I meant to do? And he's just like, oh, we glue. And so he went and grew like get the craft glue. I'm like, no.
That's not gonna
craft glue is not gonna work. So I was like, okay, so I'll go back to the hardware store, and I brought like the industrial glue and stuff and like glue them all in. And I ended up getting in supply like a year's worth of full body wash and hair wash stuff, hand soap. So I got hand soap dispensaries and stuff to put next to the taps, because they just use like what we have as like garden taps in Australia. They just have those. They don't actually have sinks and stuff. And so I got all those sort of supplies. I got in contact with a higher end dentist in Kathmandu city, and he agreed to do a yearly oral health hygiene check within the orphanage, and he would like sponsor it. And I also got, I ended up doing like a little mini toiletry bags sort of. So I got a local seamstress to make up 100 face washes, and then I bought like two toothbrushes per child worth of toothbrushes, and then I brought like, I think I bought in bulk. I felt like I was doing like a Costco run, but they don't have Costco over there. But like and this orphanage was on top of a hill, and it was like, I think it was like 76 steps up to it, and then it was like the rest of it, that's where the steps stopped, and the rest of it was just like that much of an incline. It was so steep. So I literally just emptied my backpack because I didn't take like luggage. I only took hand luggage. So I literally emptied my backpack and was like pretty much backpacking around Kathmandu with like toothbrushes, with like industrial glue, like all this sort of stuff. And I still had like cans of paint that I was picking up and stuff, because I could only hold 2 cans of paint at once. So I had to like keep doing the trip up and down the hill. And luckily the paint store was only at the bottom of the hill, so that was good. But up and down the hill, so all these like locals started going like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, these need to go up there. And they're like, okay. So then they would like walk them up for like a little bit of cash and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. So then all the locals started like getting involved and stuff, and they're like, oh, miss, do you want me to carry anything today? And I'm like, no, I'm out of things for you to carry. And I also ended up supplying I think it was about 50,000 sanitary pads for the older girls as well. And so I, to fund all this, I ended up starting a fundraiser just on Facebook. And I shared that to all of my friends on Facebook, and then that got shared out, and it ended up getting quite massive. And so my initial goal was to raise about $500 Australian. That's what I sort of estimated how much this would cost me, which when you think about it isn't very much, to how much work was actually done. But I think we ended up raising close to 750. So that was great. Amazing. Yeah, and I ended up donating the rest to the orphanage, because Lama had plans to put in a new water system, because they've been having issues where they were running out of water or the water was freezing, because they didn't have a thermoregulated tank. So he had plans to like put an underground tank in as well. So that was wonderful. So I was able to donate the rest of the money that I didn't end up spending towards that, which was wonderful. And then I ended up designing these, back to the kids being very much visual learners, I ended up designing these 2 wall murals about washing your hands and brushing your teeth. And so I painted all the walls and everything, and the kids loved it, and they were sneaking out of class. They were sneaking out of class to come help me paint. I'm like, you're meant to be in class, go back to class. And they're like, oh, miss, but this is more fun. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. It's only 1 week, you'll live. And so they're like helping me paint, and it got to the point where like Llama had to supervise who was helping me paint because
they all wanted to do
and
it.
I would have like 30 or 50 kids like coming out to help me paint, but I only had like 3 paintbrushes. And I was just like, I was meant to be the only person doing this. I didn't supply everyone with paintbrush. So, you know, we ended up painting the entire end wall with a fresh coat of yellow paint, which is the background colour that all the walls in the orphanage were. And then I ended up doing writing in English, wash your hands. And then I got one of the older kids to write in Nepali, wash your hands.
Yeah.
And then I got all of the kids to pick a colour. I had, I think, green, pink, purple, blue. I had all the primary colours, and then, you know, we mixed them and made other colours. And I got all the kids, every single one of them, to put their hand in a paint of their choosing and put their hand on the wall. And so they all had their hand on it.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, so wash your hands. Yeah. And it's all colourful and like so like poppy. Just when you walk into the bathroom area, it's just like, oh, yeah, let's wash our hands. And on the other wall, it's a bit smaller. I ended up cutting out like my version of a cartoon tooth, which just sort of looks like a weird love heart with 2 ends. It's a bit weird, but it kind of looks like a tooth. So then I ended up like tracing that onto the wall. So I painted the whole wall in like this bright blue, and then I did the tooth and then painted that all white. And then in all the like multicolors and really bright colors, I wrote brush your teeth, and then did the same like in Nepali later on. But the kids absolutely loved it, and I'm still in contact with Llama today, and he said, you know, they absolutely love it, and they love their little toiletry packs, and they all, like every morning they get up now and use their face and wash their face, because like, you know, kids get so snotty, so they wash their face in the morning, and they don't brush their teeth in the morning, but they brush their teeth after dinner. So I'm like, that's at least something. And they're like, you know, they're always yelling at each other, you didn't wash your hands. And so
that's great. I mean, that's no mean feat, Grace, what you've just described there, in a country where you don't speak the language and the transport isn't great and you're at the top of a hill. That to it, seriously, you know, I take my hat off to you, because to achieve all that in a very short time is a massive undertaking. And I tell you what, your project management skills are great. You don't need to do any Prince 2 training, because your week in Nepal volunteering demonstrates you are more than capable of project managing in very, very challenging circumstances. That is just...
Thank you, well, that's lovely.
It's just fabulous. And I love that you gave so much back, and that you still keep in touch with them. Do you think you'll go back and do some more?
I'd love to. I would love to see them again. And Nepal in itself is an absolutely beautiful country. And I was speaking to the gentleman who runs the orphanage, and I was checking in to see how it was going with like COVID hitting and everything, and it's just like, oh well, you know, the government is saying, you know, wear face mask and wash your hands. So now every time the kids are like not washing their hands, I just point to your wall mural.
That's like, so good.
So now every time they leave the orphanage, because a lot of the so it's the younger kids who are educated on site, and the older kids go to a public high school. So especially the older kids who are leaving every day to go to the high school, he's like, you have to come back in and wash your hands straight away. So with like COVID and stuff, just trying to manage that. So it was, I think, sort of a blessing in disguise that they sort of learnt all this, and I did the initiative with them just before COVID hit. So that was in December, and you know, COVID sort of started in January, if not earlier. I think it was December. But it got more and more prevalent as we got closer to the new year. but having the opportunity to do that health initiative and just to develop it, and I had the best week. Actually, it was, I just remembered this actually. It was pouring rain for the last 2 days where I was meant to do the last of the painting, because I'd spent the first couple of days supplying all of, getting all my supplies and stuff, and creating all those connections with local suppliers and business owners and things like that. So then the last 2 days where I planned just to paint for the last 2 days, it was pouring rain, and I got the last of the painting finished. I was meant to leave the orphanage. I had organised to do a trek through the Annapurna region, and I had to leave the orphanage at 7 a.m. the next morning. So I really had that last day, and it only finished raining just after lunch. So I was like, quick, get all the painting done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an incredible experience.
It really, really, it's such a privilege, I think, to do things like that. And it's something that never leaves you when you go and you see, how a different country with really kind of no resources, or very little in terms of resources. I think it stays with you, and you carry that throughout your career. It is a life-changing experience, and I think what you achieved is just absolutely fabulous. My question to you, Grace, is kind of, what is the biggest thing that you learned about yourself in that experience, and how you apply that learning back here now in Australia working as a nurse?
Oh goodness, what a question. I think one of the biggest lessons, I think that was really more reinforced, was that you never stop learning. And yes, I was over there on a clinical placement and things, but given my experience as an EN and almost finished my RNs, I think I was somewhat biased in the thought that I wouldn't be learning too much different things or anything really new. However, I very quickly came down from that cloud. And I think every other second of every other day I was learning something different and new, or a different way that they would treat something, or a different way that they would approach something. And even just the way that they would go about their diagnostics and their care as well. So I think the biggest thing that shocked me was that, yes, you never stop learning. But I think it really gave me the opportunity to grow into, I think, more of a nurse with a bit more perspective. Having had that experience in a third world country now, and also just being able to offer those experiences and the knowledge that I gained to other people back here in Australia, which I have had the opportunity to do, and not in a snobbish way, like I know more than you, or I want to tell you how to do your job. But actually, I came across this scenario while I was working in Nepal, and this is how we managed it. Would you like to hear more? And 9 times out of 10, people have gone, oh, really? Like, what did they do? Or please tell me more about that experience. Or it's been an absolute privilege to have had that experience, and the perspective and knowledge that I've gained from that experience has been absolutely immeasurable. So,
and I think, listening to your story, Grace, what I take away, and I think it's something that as nurses we're really good at, but we don't always acknowledge, that is the resourcefulness that's within us, and the ability to be able to think outside the box. You know, if there's a problem, how am I going to fix this? And you demonstrated that really well. And I think, to me, that's something that nurses do really, really well. It's like, okay, there's this problem, how are we going to fix it? And it's not always an easy fix, but you find a way, or find a way around to get the solution, or a solution that works. And that, for me, listening to your story, you know, came out really clearly about how you use those critical thinking skills, but you use them in a different way to actually make things happen, and you drove that change. And that's, you know, those are really, I want to say, sought after skills, because they are. Not everybody can do that. You know, it says a lot about you as a person that you are able to influence and get people to help you despite the language barriers, despite the difficulties. And that's part of your personality and who you are. And you were able to do that as a result. And I just think that that's such a skill to have. And there's one more thing I really want to ask you, Grace. Has it given you the bug to go and do more of this?
Oh my goodness, yes. Absolutely. I hadn't actually booked anything, obviously, because of COVID, but in my mind, I'm definitely going back like this time next year, which is basically this week. And I absolutely loved that experience so much. And I would jump at any opportunity to go and volunteer overseas, or even within Australia, just to keep volunteering and giving my skills elsewhere, because I have a career worth of giving my skills in metropolitan or hospitals or anything like that. But having the opportunity to give my skills into lesser known and lesser advantaged areas, I think is absolutely amazing. It's definitely something that I want to pursue, and if I could have my whole career in that sort of environment, I would. So.
And it's a really good way to, I want to say, it helps you to be grateful for what you have. And I think the feeling that you can help somebody else who doesn't have the resources and the opportunities is a really positive thing for your own sense of well-being. You know, similar, I sponsor somebody to do their nurse training in Africa, from one of the poorest slums in the world, and I get huge rewards just from getting the letters and hearing about that person's journey, and understanding that, you know, for them that's a struggle. It is a struggle more than people realize, and some of the things you highlighted in your story are things that this particular person has also experienced. And as nurses, you know, that we see the need, and I think we see, you know, that it's so important to give back, and sharing those stories about how other nurses do that, I think, for me, prompts other people to think, well, that's something I'd like to do. And I think it's a great testament to you that seriously, in what you have achieved. I think you've done so much. And I've really loved listening to your story. And normally at this point I would ask people, you know, how they want to be best remembered in their nursing career. But I'm not going to ask you that question, Grace, because I actually think there's a lot more to your story to come. And maybe we'll interview you later on down the line and see what adventures you've got up to, because I have no doubt there'll be many, many more stories to tell. And I really, really want to say thank you for sharing your story today, because it's great for other nurses to hear what you're doing. I also wondered whether you have, and you may be doing this already, whether you have thoughts about formalising the fundraising you've done for Nepal, you know, in a more kind of structured way? Is that something that you thought about?
That is something that I have thought about, and I was actually awarded, without my knowledge, the university put me forward for a Australian government award from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trades. So I was actually awarded the New Columbo grant, I suppose you can call it, and award. So I've been introduced to that community, but unfortunately with COVID, a lot of their events and things have been postponed, and but that's just more a networking opportunity and something that I'm very grateful to be a part of. And it was so wonderful to hear of the news that I had been put forward for this award.
That's great.
And to have won it for contributing to the international relationships with Australia and Nepal. But I think definitely something along those lines that you just mentioned, that is definitely something that I would love to pursue. I think it's just more something that I have to figure out a way I can pursue it. Exactly. But thank you so much for your wonderful compliment. That was very, very lovely. And I would love to come back and tell more of my stories.
Definitely.
It's been an absolute privilege.
I would love to have you back.
I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you.
But I've really enjoyed connecting with you and hearing other nursing stories across Australia and globally as well. As you sort of get more and more into those interconnections. And LinkedIn has been wonderful for that. But it's just been wonderful to sort of connect with like-minded people. And it's been wonderful to connect with you. So
thank you, Grace.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And I just want to say that your award was very well deserved. Very well deserved. And I have no doubt we'll hear more of Grace. Definitely more of Grace. So thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Eva.